Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 61. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, this one takes me back to 1989. As a true hockey fan, grew up playing hockey, loved the Flames. When my buddy Tyler Sloan hooked me up with this fella, I was like, yes, please, thank you. So go ahead, name and who you are.
Colin Patterson, former Calgary Flame. Grew up in the west end of Toronto called Rexdale, Ontario, and happy to be here, Jeff.
So when I had the idea for the show, this is almost 2 years to the day since I launched it. I was like, who do I know? I was like, I want to cover athletes. So I'm trying to think who's the best athlete. I'm like, Tyler Sloan. So that was my crack into the NHL, and he's been cool enough to put me in touch with Kami and now you. So this show is the only reason we're together is because of Tyler Sloan. So I just want to make sure that he understands how much I appreciate it.
He's a great guy, and he's a great part of our alumni too,
which is really cool. He loves it, obviously, being around characters like you. So this will be a fun one for me. I can't wait to hear your story. So the gist of the show is to kind of go back to a point in time where you grew up, how you grew up, what inspired you back then, and then we'll kind of weave our way to where you are today and how much time you spend with the alumni crew.
Sure. So I grew up in Rexdale, Ontario, as I mentioned. I had two brothers and a sister. We were all into sports, playing, basically hockey and lacrosse.
Okay.
Hockey would finish, lacrosse would start. I started playing lacrosse when I was 4 years old. I started playing hockey when I was 5 years old. So it just went, from one season to the next. There wasn't any in between.
Yep.
And they never crossed over until later, in probably midget or junior. Mm-hmm. But that was life. And, we played other sports too. We played baseball and basketball. We had 30 kids my age or a year older or younger within, probably 2 blocks of where we lived.
No way.
So it was great. And my dad would build a rink every year in the backyard, and everybody would come over and we'd all be playing ball hockey or once we got to be able to skate better, mm-hmm. everybody had the skates on. But that rink evolved from being just sort of a little rink to a bigger rink covering our whole backyard. My one brother worked in the printing business part-time, so he'd bring the skids home. Right. And we formed boards, and then we put chicken wire up. We put,
No way.
Yeah, we had lights. So we were playing all the time. It was great. It was a great childhood.
It's the classic kind of like hockey story, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know what? We played all the time, and, it allowed you to practice different things too. And mm-hmm. It was so much fun. It was just fun to have your buddies over. And, I sort of like we had ice time from like 4 till 6. And then my one brother had it from 6 to 8. My eldest brother had, from 8 on. Yeah.
And were you interested in watching your older brothers play? Like, were they bigger, better?
Yeah, and that's basically what drives you as the youngest in the family is you're watching your siblings play and you go, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And you start doing it, probably younger than they started. Yep. And, that's what it is. And, yep. They always help you to a point, and then they're like, okay, you got to go.
He's got me. What'd your mom and dad do? How did they kind of influence you guys?
Yeah, well, my mom was a registered nurse and my dad was an electrical engineer. And they were big on, education, but they were also big on sports too. Mm. They both played different sports growing up. My mom was pretty short. She was about 5'2", 5'3", maybe. And my dad was about 6 feet.
Okay. Yeah. So what did it look like? Were you always in a small town? Like when did things start to click for you? Whether it's like, going into junior, like when did you have to leave home at a certain point?
No, I was pretty fortunate, but growing up playing, I always played, sort of at the highest level.
Yep.
The MTHL, which was the Metropolitan Toronto mm-hmm. Hockey League, mm-hmm. It didn't encompass Rexdale, at that time. So you could play anywhere. And I played for a bunch of different teams in the MTHL.
Okay.
And then when I got to midget, my first year midget, this guy was coaching the one team that I was played for the year before. He was going up to coach midget. He said, yeah, you're guaranteed a spot. And, I wasn't a big kid. I grew later in life. And so when I got to, when I talked about lacrosse and hockey not overlapping, well, that was the 1 year where lacrosse overlapped. We went to the Ontario finals. And so I wasn't able to go to the tryouts, but I figured, well, I was guaranteed a spot. He'd already promised me a spot. So when it finished and I went out, I got cut.
No way.
Yeah, he cut me, and I was devastated. So
first time ever not making that team, right?
First time ever, getting cut. And I was like, okay. So went to another team. I probably went to about 8 or 9 teams.
No way.
Yeah, and I got cut, because every team had sort of
They've been full.
filled their positions,
Yep.
and they were looking, if I was, exceptional, then they would take me. But so I said, well, I'm not going to play hockey anymore. So I quit.
15, 16?
Yeah, I was probably
First year midget?
Yeah, first year midget.
Not
whatever that
underage,
is,
like
yeah.
so
15, maybe.
okay,
Maybe it was 16.
Yep.
And then I ended up playing high school hockey, which was not anything at the time.
It was like intramurals.
Oh yeah, it was. It was probably worse than intramural. But the teachers went on strike, so that ended after about 2 weeks of playing high school hockey. So I was sitting at home, and my parents really wanted me to get out and do something. So a couple of guys from the team that were in the lower division, and back then it was AA was the highest, then there was A, and then B.
Yep.
And so the guys from, I remember Pat Bannon and Ken Lemke came, and they were coaches and the general manager, the manager of the midget A team in Etobicoke, which was Rexdale was a part of. And they asked me if I'd come out and play, and I said, I don't really want to. I said, I think I'm done with hockey. And they said,
it's done, hey?
Yeah, it's done, And I go, but they said, just come out, play one game, and if you like it, then, keep playing. But if you don't like it, we won't bug you anymore. So I said, okay, that's a deal. So I went out and I played, and I loved it. And it was, it just brought back the fun again for the game. And that's what was sort of missing, at times within lots of players is you miss the fun part of it.
Yeah.
So I started having fun again. So then I went from there, and I played, midget AA the next year. And then the guy who coached the midget AA team, had me on the junior B team. And then I got drafted because in Ontario, it's a midget draft for the Ontario Junior Hockey League, but they also have an overage draft, which I had no idea about. Right? I figured my hockey career was done anyways.
Like you really thought that junior B, you were like
junior B. I go, if I can get to tier 2 junior A, which like the AJHL, which was the Ontario Junior Hockey League. I'd be pretty happy, and if I could ever get a scholarship, I'd be thrilled.
So you're thinking like it's kind of there. You're like, ideally, that's where I'd like to be.
Yeah, and you know what? But when you're playing junior B, that's a long ways away. So I got drafted to the Peterborough Petes, and they had just won the Memorial Cup. So I went, and I was the last cut from them. And I was 18 at the time.
What year is this?
This is 1978.
Okay. So what does the OHL look like back then?
So, I don't even know how many teams there were, but a lot of players from the NHL came from, junior hockey at the time.
Yep.
And there was depending on the year, whether it's the Quebec League or the Ontario League or the Western League, you have a run of great players. And in Ontario, they had a lot of good players going through. So.
Mean? Was it mean back then?
It was mean.
Yeah, like it was.
There was tons of fights.
Yeah.
Just that's the way the game was, and you had to learn how to play it.
Yep.
So they put me with a billet, and I'll never forget this. The Connollys, and they were just great people. And I remember I came home from a road trip, and we're still in exhibition season.
So team still trying out,
but we're down to we got maybe 2 or 3 guys to cut.
Yep.
And their son had played, and he played all over, the Ontario Hockey League. And he was a pretty good player, but he got shuffled around a couple of times and never finished his education. And she sort of said, the game really used him. And I walked away, and I sort of woke up the next morning. I said, I'm not going to let the game use me. I'm going to use the game. So, sure enough, the next day I go to practice, and now they're going to bring over 2 Finnish players. And it was really one of the first times they brought 78,
wow.
78, 79, where they brought Finnish players over to play in the Ontario Hockey League. So I knew I was done. So Gary Green, who was the coach at the time, called me in and said, listen, you can go down to our farm team, which was, an OJHL team, Richmond Hill, and, you can play there, and we'll call you up. And then I was like, what, I think I want to try and get a scholarship. And I said, I don't want to, thanks for the offer, but I don't want to take it. And he said, good for you, and good luck. And, they treated me very well. So I left there, and I went back, and I played 2 years in the Ontario Junior Hockey League for Royal York Royals. And it was great. And my last year, which, I was older, so, and I'd started to grow and get stronger and bigger. But one thing, you learn when you're smaller players, you learn how to play the game, so it wasn't just, I could skate faster, I had the brawn or anything. I understood the game, and, I was sort of a student of the game that way too.
Did, back then, scholarships, were they a big, in today's hockey world, if you go tier 2, it's like, obviously you want a scholarship, and the the dub out here is a big draw too. Back then, was there a bunch of scholarships being given out, or was it very, very rare?
No, there's a bunch of scholarships being given out, which was great. And that's where I said, I've got to focus on that, because I'm not going to play in the Ontario Hockey League. And, I wasn't good enough to play in pro. I wouldn't be drafted, nothing like that. So, I was pretty fortunate. I got a lot of offers for scholarships, and then you're allowed 5 visits. So I went on 4 visits. I went to Bowling Green, Boston University, obviously Clarkson. I went to RPI, and my last one was going to be Harvard.
No way.
Yeah.
So do you have vivid memories of going to these schools?
Yeah.
Like, was this it's a pretty informative time, right? Like, you're at this age where to have those experiences, I'm sure they just stick with you forever.
Oh, they do. And I mean, it was great. It was great going to see every school. And I was about to go to see Harvard, and I started to make a decision. And the Harvard trip was going to be delayed another week. And, when I went to Clarkson, I had this great guy who's still a great friend of mine, Derek Embody. And he was the guy who was assigned to take me out that night, because they assigned, different guys to look after you. Yeah. And we just had a great time and hit it off. And he was a senior, so we were never going to play together. But, just going to Clarkson's a really small town, 10,000 people, probably 5,000 are students. Clarkson itself is one of the top 10 engineering schools in the U.S. I didn't take engineering, but it's a great school. And it's it's a private school. There's 2,500 students, and we had another school, Potsdam State, which probably had another 2,500. So it was a true U.S. college town, and it was great.
Did you get to? Was there a game when you were there?
Yeah, there's a game.
So you got to go in the building and see it.
Yeah, and the building was really small. It might have held 2,000 people, but they had probably 2,500 to 3,000.
And they were going?
Yeah, and they had, the band going, and they had this giant bell they would ring if they scored. So
Wild.
Just the atmosphere. And that was with all the places that I went to. It was really, really neat. Obviously, BU is in, Boston, bigger city, and I didn't really want that. So Clarkson fit in nicely for me.
When you were, and, I've talked to Sloan and I talked to Kami, and you guys how good were you to get a scholarship? Like, you guys, it sounds like you're downplaying a bit, because to get a scholarship, you got to be good, right? So you had something figured out at that age, right?
Yeah, I was a pretty decent junior player. One of my great stories is Jerry York, who was the coach of Bowling Green, said to me, we'll see you at the All-Star game, at the, OJHL All-Star game. I didn't make the All-Star team. But I was a pretty good junior player.
Yep.
Which, allowed me to, get a lot of offers. And my marks were decent in high school, so it worked out really well.
So when you decided to go to Clarkson, your family's probably pumped because you're going to continue your education, do your thing down there. How long were you there?
Absolutely. I was there 3 years.
Okay.
And, I was never drafted, so I was what classified as a college free agent.
So you go to college, don't get drafted.
Yeah.
So then are you thinking, okay, I'm going to play college and that'll be it?
Well, I thought, once I got to play in college hockey, you go, gee, it'd be pretty neat to play in the Olympics. And that was sort of the next goal, because the next Olympics in 1984, I started Clarkson at 1980. I was 20 years old. I go, it sort of fits in nicely.
Yep.
And, my third year, Calgary had drafted a kid on our team, Jim Lang, and they took him in the second round. So like anybody they draft, they come and they take a look at them. And, for me, as the story goes, we were playing in a tournament, and typically what scouts will do, and they'll open the program, they go, this guy's too old, you know, height, weight, you know, and who's been drafted. And so you end up with a few kids that you're looking at. And fortunately for me, it was Cliff Fletcher, who was a GM. They had Jerry Blair, who's the chief scout, and Jack Ferrara, who is a head scout in the U.S. And they came to watch Jim Lang play. So they said, well, let's just close our programs, and, you know, at the end, we'll write down the number of the guy we like the best. And sure enough, you know, at the end of the game, they all, you know, sort of played their card, and it was my number.
So you had a game.
Yeah. So, you know, and I didn't really think I had that good a game, you know, but, you know, then they come back the next day and they're watching you. You know, so the next game they go, yeah, well, let's keep an eye on him. So they kept watching me through the year, which I had no idea, like absolutely no idea. So we were playing in Harvard. It was near the end of the year, and I got out after the game in Harvard, and there's these two guys in trench coats there, and I thought they were
classic, right?
I thought they were with the FBI. I truly thought they were FBI. And
you were up to some shit.
And my coach goes, "Those two gentlemen want to talk to you," and I was like, "Oh boy, you know,
found me."
So I go over, you know, and my first thing, you know, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. And they go, well, we don't even know what you're talking about, but, you know, we're two scouts. We're the Calgary Flames. They introduce themselves. I go, oh, you know, you probably want to know about Jim Lang, who you drafted. You know, he's a big kid, you know, a good defenseman. They go, no, we're wondering about you. And I said, well, what are you even wondering? What do you mean?
Like out of left field.
Yeah.
This totally catches you.
I have no idea. And they go, well, we were wondering if, you know, what your plans are for the future. And I go, finish school, I guess. And they go, well, what about, you know, hockey? Would you, you know, be willing to forego your senior year to join our organization? Because Calgary had taken a kid out of Clarkson the year before, Mike Presley. And so anyways, it was, I never even thought about it. Never even dawned on me. Dawned on me. So at the end of the year, my coach called me up, and the assistant coach, you know, the coach was Billy O'Flaherty, assistant coach Terry Mahar, and Terry had this buddy that was, you know, an agent that could, you know, sort of inquire for me, because the Flames had been phoning. There's a couple other teams that had sort of all of a sudden become interested. So I remember we went up to the office, and Calgary was, you know, the agent was there, and he's, you know, he said, you know, the Calgary's made this offer. And I said, great. He goes, so you got to, you know, talk it over and let me know. So as soon as we hung up, we phoned my parents. And, you know, there wasn't a speakerphone. I mean, you held out the phone, you dialed, there was a rotary dial. So you held it out, you literally rolled it out. And so we hold it out, and, you know, got my mom and dad on the other end, and they're speaking into it, myself and my coach, you know. And so I said, Mom, you know, Dad, I got this great offer, you know, from the Calgary Flames, you know, to sign with them. It's a two-way deal. And both my mom and dad said, don't sign it. They said, you know, schooling's too important, you know, because we knew a lot of guys who had, you know, played in the minors and, you know, never advanced beyond that, and sort of got trapped within the game. And once again, you know, it came back to, you know, don't let the game use you, use the game. And so I said, okay. So we hung up the phone, and my coach goes, you know what, let's call the agent back. And so we called him back and said, here's the situation, you know, really want Colin to finish university and see what you can do. So the biggest part of my contract was the Flames agreed to pay for the rest of my schooling.
No way.
At Clarkson, yeah. And Clarkson at the time, I mean, this is going back a few years, was about 20 to 25 grand US.
Wow.
And, you know, there's no way my family, you know, we couldn't afford it. And, you know, even with the contract that I signed, if I played in the minors, I still wasn't going to be able to afford it. Right? So it was great. So the Flames agreed to pay for the rest of my schooling. So that was fantastic. And, you know, and it was great for my coach, Billy O'Flaherty, to allow me to do that, because it wasn't the common thing back in the day. Now it's very common for guys to leave school after their first year, second year, third year. But it put him in a real bind, because they weren't looking for a player to replace me, you know, during their scouting process. So, you know, and it was great, because he said, you know, this is your opportunity. And then, you know, I had the Olympic team interested. Dave King had phoned me up.
King.
Yeah. So he phoned me up, and he said, like, during this whole process, and he said, you know, we want you on the Olympic team, which I was pumped about. And he goes, we're going over to Europe to play in the World Championships. We're going to have half, you know, NHL players, half college players, you know, sort of start the process. And so, but then I didn't have the offer at the time. And then all of a sudden I get this offer, and I go, you know, I'm 23 years old or about to turn 23. I go, if I go to the Olympics, I'll be 24. Will any team even want you? Right. So I decided I'll sign with the Flames. And I remember Cliff Fletcher, I was told, general manager, he's going to phone you on Friday night at, 7:00. So I said, okay. So 5:00, we got everybody over at our place, and we're, a few drinks or a few pops are being had. But I'm going, I'm not going to drink.
I gotta keep together.
And then, Mr. Fletcher's going to phone me at 7, and it'll be great, and then we can continue on because, although the deal was done, to hear from him, it was really going to solidify it, right? So 7:00 comes, nothing, right? So 7:15, I go, maybe I'll have one, 7:30, So now it's 9:00. The tunes are going. We're all having a few drinks, and the phone rings, right? So my one buddy from my team answers it. He goes, yeah, hold on a sec. He goes, hey, Colin, there's a old guy on the phone, and it's not your dad. And I'm going, well, who could it be? Sure enough, not thinking, 7:00. Mountain time,
9 East.
Yeah. So now I pick up the phone and I go, oh, yeah. It's Cliff Fletcher. So Mr. Fletcher, I was like, cut the music, everything stops and it's dead silent. And he goes, welcome to the organization. I said, well, thank you, Mr. Fletcher. And he goes, listen, we know you have spring break coming up. We know you want to finish, this year for sure. And then, you'd go back in the summers for the rest of your degree. And I said, yes. And he goes, we have this opportunity. You go down and play in the minors in Colorado, and we will pay you $250 a game. I was like, you got to be kidding me. $250 a game. So I said, absolutely. I'll go and, hung up the phone, and it was just,
on.
Oh, it was on. Yeah, it was on. So we went downtown in Potsdam, New York, and, basically it was just all made up of bars because the drinking age was 18. And so we sort of hit every bar. And,
everyone's telling the story.
Oh, yeah. We just had a great time. And, and I was going to pay for the drinks. And, I think it cost me like $10 for the night because everybody was, just giving us beer. And it was fabulous. So I went down and played in the minors. I played, I think I played 7 games or 6 or 7 games in about 10 days. And, ironically, I got in my 3 fights, which, it just happened. Right. So then, the other part is I had to phone, Dave King and tell him I wasn't going to,
Were you surprised? Like when you said you wanted to make the Olympic team, so when you get that phone call, you're like, "Holy hell, this is like
really
reality."
Happening. Yeah, it's really happening. Yeah, and it was quite. I mean, it was really shocking. It was neat, but then I had to phone him, tell him no, and his sort of parting words for me were, the minors is no place to play a career. I was like, okay, so
noted.
Yeah, and you just go on and you play, and as I said, went to the minors, then came back, and the next year, went, I did. Finished my 3rd year, and then I took that first, semester or that first summer and went back to school.
Yep.
And then I went to training camp, and I had a very good training camp.
Years this?
This is 1983.
Okay.
So I had a really good training camp, and I'm talking to my agent. My agent goes, "Yeah, I talked to Cliff Fletcher." He goes, "The season starts tomorrow. You're on the team." I'm like, that's incredible, because you go down to the minors, you play, and I knew I could play at that level.
What did it feel like when you went down there to play? Were you like nervous? Were you freaked out because some of these like men were skating around, or what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, you're nervous because you go, you haven't played at that level before, and all these guys, the majority of guys had played in the, junior hockey, which was sort of where everybody came from. Like there weren't a ton of college players. There's no European guys down there. So it was intimidating. You're nervous, but once you got out to play, you realize, college hockey's pretty darn good.
Yeah, you can keep up.
And you forget that. And Calgary had a real unique scenario where they had started with Eddie Beers. They signed Eddie Beers, a college free agent. They signed Jamie McCowan, Charlie Bourgeois, myself, Neil Sheehy, Joel Otto, Gino Cavallini.
All out of college?
All out of college, all free agents. So there was no draft choice. There was no...
No way?
Yeah.
Who was this? Was it one scout that was pulling all these U.S. kids out?
Yeah. It was more or less Jack Ferrara who was finding them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because that's a lineup, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at that, and at one time we had like 7 or 8 of us on that team.
Wow.
And so then, you traded guys away, but you go, when you have, that's a 30-year team, and it was, part of it was, Jack Farfina. The other part was, Badger Bob Johnson was a coach,
right.
Came from university, came
right.
from Wisconsin, so he understood the college game. He understood what, guys could offer. And, I mean, for us, it was great. It was a tremendous opportunity to play. So I went to camp, and then, as I said, my agent tells me that. So next day we're in the corral, and, Cliff Fletcher calls me up. He calls me up in the stands, and I'm like, yeah, Cliff. And he goes, hey, Colin, he goes, you're doing great here. We've had some inquiries from the Olympic team, and we think it would be really good for you to go and play with the Olympic team for the year. And I was like, I wasn't excited then, because from what Dave King had said to me, our last words, I go, I don't think this is going to be good. So as it turned out, I went and I played like probably 4 or 5 games in the Olympic team. And it just seemed that he wasn't going to play me, it wasn't a fit. And the way he was lining me up against, other teams, because you played a lot of NHL teams, and, the NHL guys would, they were pretty hard on you, and when you're playing against the tougher guys in the NHL team, it's not much fun. So he ends up, we went to Winnipeg, and we played the Winnipeg Jets, and, I knew what he was going to do. And we got a flight in the morning. It was like a 6 or 7 o'clock flight, flew back to Calgary, and then we had this practice with the Olympic team, and we're at the corral as well. And so he just skates the living shit out of me, at the end. And then at the end, he calls me over, goes, hey, you're not my type of player, and, or for the Olympic team. And, we're going to send you back to the Flames. I was like, great.
Thank you.
At that point, I was like, whatever. So I go out, basically you just walk across the ice, and you're in the Flames dressing room. You walk through the concourse, and you go to the Flames dressing room. Yeah. And so Badger Bob is, he's saying, he always used to rub his nose. He goes, Patterson, I thought you'd make the Olympic team, but he goes, good to have you back, and da. So we go out, and I've skated 2 hours now, and now we go out, we skate for about an hour and a half with the Flames, and then he keeps me out. He skates me again more. So I've been on the ice for like 4 hours. I'm absolutely beat. I can barely, at the end of it, I'm just exhausted, right?
But your skates must have just been like soaking wet.
Oh, they were soaking wet. Everything was
leather.
Oh yeah, it was bad. And just my gloves, I mean, back in the day, they didn't have the technology.
No, it was like rocks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just everything, right? And we didn't have the breathable equipment or even the laundry, right? So I went back, and and then he calls me in. He said, listen, we're going to send you down the minors. Which I go, whatever. At this point, you don't really care. You sort of go with I just want to play.
And you're still into it though. Like hockey's still.
Yeah, because it's my first year. It's my first training camp, and so they're sending Neil Sheehy down too, and we're going down to Colorado, in Denver, and it was a great spot to be. But so Neil goes, we called him Harv, because he went to Harvard. So I said, Harv, listen, I said, he goes, I'll be out in a minute, just meet me in the parking lot. So I take my hockey bag, and I've got, whatever clothing I have, and I put it down. And I sit on my hockey bag. I'm in the parking lot of, in the corral, and I fall asleep. Like I'm sitting up, but my head's down, I'm falling asleep. And unbeknownst to me, Steve Simmons, who was a writer for the Sun at the time, he comes by, and so I didn't even know, but the next day he writes this, sort of scathing article. Here's another guy they signed that will never play in the NHL. And, it just rips me, without even talking to me. So I don't know this, but my dad is going through Calgary on a work trip, like the next day. So he gets it, and he reads this thing.
He's pissed.
Yeah, he's mad. So he cuts it out. And I had no idea, but he goes, he'll be back. He'll show you, right? So sure enough, I go down the minors, and, we're playing, and I get caught out after curfew. Like, Pierre Paget is a coach, right? And he is, he's hard. And I mean, I didn't get, like, it wasn't like we were on the road getting caught out. We were at home. And, I was out in the dance floor shaking her up a bit. And I get this tap on the back. It's like 2 a.m. I look around. It's Pierre.
No way.
Oh, yeah. What the, And meanwhile, all the other guys have like bolted, they're out. So he goes, you come see me, tomorrow morning. And I go, oh man, I'm going to get sent down to the next level.
Which is what, the East Coast or something?
East
Or what?
Coast. I go, I'm not, I can't play there. So we get in there, and I get in the morning. You have to go through the dressing room to get to his room. So I go through, and I'm sitting there. We're at the table just like you and I are. And he goes, I said, he's sort of looking at me, and I go, I'm going to start this conversation. Pierre, in college we didn't really have the curfews. They sort of trusted us, blah 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 blah. And he goes, Colin, don't worry about that. And I was like, oh, okay. He goes, our team, we're not that tough. And I was like, yeah, well, whatever. Because, we had Tim Hunter last year. He got called up and, so we're not that tough. And, you had 3 fights last year. When I went down, I was like, yeah, I did. Yeah. And then I sort of clued in.
What he's angling towards.
I know what he's angling towards. And he goes, we'd like you to be sort of our tough guy. And I go, oh, Pierre, I said, that's not me. I go, these things just sort of happen, right? And they were circumstance and, and he's like, give me this one. I was like, oh. So now I get up and I got to walk back in the dressing room and the guys go, are you being sent down? I go, no. I said, it's worse than that.
Another fighter.
So sure enough, we go and we're playing Salt Lake City the next night. And they had this guy, Dave Richter, who is one of the toughest guys in the Central Hockey League. He's a left-handed guy. And sure enough, I get hit in the corner and I didn't even look. I just elbowed the guy in the head. Sure enough, it's Dave Richter. He gets upset. So he wants to fight, but I know he's a left-handed guy. So I literally wrap my hand in his sweater on his left fist, and he is grunting, and my neck is twisted down, and the punches are ending like about here, and I can hear him grunting every time. I go, Christ, he's got to be getting tired of grunting, just from grunting, right? But then I realized he doesn't really have my left, so I hit him with my left, which was the dumbest move I could ever make.
Wake him up?
Oh my God. I thought I was on a bull ride it felt like 5 minutes. And, it's one of those ones where, you're being tossed around the ice and you're looking, but I still got his arm. He hasn't hit me yet, but he's yanking me around and I'm looking for the refs. I'm going, where are you guys? So finally they come in and, break it up. And the guy goes, the lines go, you got to let go of me. I can't. My hand is it's cramped in there. Right. So they got to peel my fingers back and I'm sitting like this. I'm in the penalty box and I'm like, I look up and we're right across from our bench, right? And all our guys are like, great job, because you don't want him on the ice, right? So I look over and I go, there's Pierre Paget. He's got this big grin on his face. I'm going, I go, this is the worst night of my life. And I go, and it's going to get worse because we play him tomorrow night.
You already know.
I already know, and I'm already going through. He's going to kill me, right? So we take vans. We got 5 vans. So you pile the guys in. All the guys, hey, great job. I'm like, yeah. And so we get to the airport, and Pierre calls me over, and he goes, I'm just waiting for it, right? And he goes, the Flames, they phone me up, and they go, we need a guy. I said, you're the guy. You and, this other guy, Bruce Eakins, who's a really talented hockey player. You guys are going up tomorrow. You're going to play in Chicago. I'm like, oh, thank God. I'm just like, thank you.
Dodge a lefty.
I dodged that one. But I go, I better play well. I better figure a way to stay up there. Else I'll be back, right? And as tough as the guys are in the NHL, and there's tons of tough guys, it's more controlled toughness and, in different ways. But, in the minors, it's like, they're
Wild West,
yeah.
Yep.
So we get to, I get called up, so I take a couple of things from clothing. So myself, Neil Sheehy, Al McInnes, and Mike Vernon, we were living together. We got a place, in Colorado, in Denver, yeah. So we were all living together. So the boys are wishing me luck, and I could tell another story, but there's tons of stories to tell. Yeah, tons of stories to tell. But so I grab my clothes and head off, and I'm up there, and skating around and warm up, and you're in the Chicago Stadium, and you dress in the basement, you go up the stairs, and you come out basically behind the net, and you're skating around. I go, this is pretty sweet, but they have about 500 to 1,000 rabid fans that come down and just taunt you like during warm up, right? So I'm skating around, they're going, fuck off, no name, right? And I'm like, I go, well, our team, other than Lanny, we don't really have any big names on the team at that point. Maybe Doug Risebrow, But I'm skating around. Every time I skate around, it sort of gets a little, fuck off, no name, fuck off, no name. And so I'm like, oh, well, whoever, they don't like somebody, but whatever it is, right? So we play the game, and I line up against, I'm starting the game, and I'm lining up against Al Secord.
No.
Yeah, and I'm looking over, and I'm like, I got this big shit ass grin on my face. I'm going, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this is Al Secord, And he looks at me, and I'm like, oh, like I better head down, don't make eye contact. And then I'm going, because he's a tough guy. There's no way I'm touching him. So we play the game. We end up losing, but I played well enough to stay up. And so, but I get back. We get down the stairs after the game. Take my jersey off, and I go, that's funny. I don't have a name on my jersey. I'm going. Frack, that's who they were yelling at. They were yelling at me. They were yelling at me because everybody else, because back in the day they didn't have all the name bars and everything like they do now, and they don't carry them on the road. And so it was pretty unique.
That's your first game in the show.
That's my first game in the NHL.
No way. Yeah. No name.
No name. So it was great, and what? I never looked back. I was pretty fortunate. I was able to stay up the rest of the time, and they had just opened the Saddle Dome, so. My next game was in the Saddle Dome. It was the second game in the Saddle Dome. 83, yeah. And we played St. Louis Blues and ended up scoring 2 goals. First, I started again, and 26 seconds in, Doug Risebrow fed me a puck, and I remember shooting. It was Mike Liut, and I go,
Liut,
yeah. And it was like I had the whole net. It just seemed that way, right?
Just like slowed down.
Everything slowed right down for me, and. Shot it, went in, and I remember I went against the boards, and I was like, put my arms up, and I said, I scored a goal in the NHL. I can't believe it. I scored a goal in the NHL. It was just like everything sort of, everything was slow. The guys coming in, everything. Yeah, it was really neat. So, somebody, I think it was Reiser, or Dave Heinmarscher was the winger, got me the puck, and it was really neat. So then I scored again in that game, and it turned out to be the first game-winning goal for the Flames in the Saddle Dome.
So cool.
Yeah, so it was really neat. So we went out afterwards, and I remember we were at this place called Claudio's. It's on 11.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It's the Oyster Bar now, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So I remember I got the phone, and collect call from Colin Patterson to my parents, right? And my parents answered, and we were so excited because they were trying to listen to it on the radio in Toronto, trying to catch a St. Louis signal, which you could barely get.
Wow. I was going to ask you about your parents. Yeah. Along this ride, are they just like okay with the decisions you're making and the path you're on, and they're just
absolutely.
Go after it?
The fact that I went back, that first summer, before I went to training camp, going to school, they loved that, and you know what? They were thrilled with the fact that I did that, and I listened to them too, I'm sure, and that I actually made the team, and it was really neat, along the way that it's not like today where they get to see every game. Yeah, you might catch 4 or 5 games a year where they could actually watch it on TV,
like a doubleheader, like on the Saturday night game.
But even the Saturday night games, we weren't getting back east unless you played Toronto or Montreal.
Yeah, you had to be at it.
Yeah, if you were playing somebody else, they didn't. They didn't show the games. Yep. But you know what? When we went back to Toronto, Buffalo, Detroit, Montreal, they could come to those games.
They would travel, kind of do the tour
so they
with you.
Go to the games. Yeah, it was great, and all my buddies would come, and it was tough to get tickets in Toronto because the teams allotted, I think, 50 tickets, and when you go back to Toronto, all the guys want tickets. It's not like they give them to you for free. You got to pay for them. So, I would get, I'd try and talk whoever wasn't from Ontario and say, listen, can I, buy your tickets? So you might get 4 at the most, and I had tons of friends and family. And I had one game where I didn't play much in Toronto. We were down 5-0.
Oh.
Yeah, we were losing 5. This is, later on, but the benches in Toronto were right, you could walk right behind them. Like,
oh, yeah.
there was no boards.
Yeah,
right?
they were like,
they're just benches, and you sat there, and, somebody could tap you in the back. So we're playing, and we're down 5-0. So as a defensive forward, you don't really play that much, and I might be jumping around here on the timelines.
no, you're good.
But anyways, it's so we're sitting there, and I'm looking up, and I can see across the rink, in the gardens, because you couldn't get tickets together, right? So I look, my one brother's got his jacket like this, is closed, but he opens up when he sees me. Look, he's got a Flames t-shirt on, but he shuts it, right? And then he's with my dad, and I can't find my other brother and my mom, and I'm like, oh. But one of my buddies comes up, and he's got his popcorn and his beer, and he's going, I paid good money for these tickets. You're not even playing. So I'm like, oh, man. Because, you played the start of the game, but then once we got down, they were playing others. So sure enough, we come back and we tie it, right? So now, I think it was Crispy or Badger, I can't remember who the coach was, hits me on the, you're out now. And we're into overtime. I go, I had to tie my skates up, right? My feet, because my feet were just killing me. I go, undo your skate. I go, I don't think I'm getting out. So sure enough, don't I score the goal?
No way.
I score in overtime. And I'm like, yeah.
Your brother's flashing.
Oh, yeah. Well, my brother, my dad, my mom, and my other brother had left the rink. They went to the bar across the street.
No way.
Yeah, so then they couldn't get back in the rink. That's great.
Do you, when you make it and you play your first game, score your first goal, is it that shocking? Like, are you that surprised? Or are you just like, this is meant to be? Or what actually goes through your head?
I don't know what was really going through my head back in the day, but it was surprise. It was shocking just because, there weren't many guys coming out of, the college scene, and there weren't a ton of college free agents.
Yep.
But it was starting to roll that way. There was all of a sudden, people were recognizing that the college hockey game was pretty good, but I just never expected to play in the NHL. And when I did, and when you score, you go, man, like,
like what the chances are like almost zero, right?
Yeah. I don't know what the chances were or what the odds were. I'm sure they put a commercial out on those odds now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Was it a common theme back then, or even in today's pro game? Do guys, it seems like everyone's surprised they actually got there. Is it this like underlying just, humble kind of upbringing? They're just like, or is there some like that, and there's some that are super cocky? They're like, I'm going to make it, and they do get there. Like,
yeah. And you know what? I think there's a combo of both, but there's a lot of great players that never end up playing. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I think one of the things is, I was always a hard worker.
Yep.
I was a goal scorer, in university, but I wasn't your typical goal scorer. Mm-hmm. Like, I was a mucker type goal scorer. Yeah. And, I had a pretty good shot. Mm-hmm. So, power play, those type of things, but I never played the power play in the NHL. And then you had to find your spot. Mm-hmm. You go, hey, if you're a goal scorer, are you a better goal scorer than Lanny McDonald? No. Yep. Better goal scorer than Hoken Lube? No. Yep. Okay, now you get into, are you as tough as Jim Poplinski or Tim Hunter? Nope. So what role are you going to play?
Interesting.
And you can, if you're a versatile player and you kill penalties, which I could do, and then I became a defensive forward, and you play against the best players in the game, but you're not counted on to score a lot of goals. Yep. And, if I could turn my career back, I think I would have put a little more pressure on myself to score more. But my focus was, I got to make sure they don't score.
Yeah.
And that was my job.
Do you think it takes, some of the people that don't make it, that could have been more skilled or just whatever, do you think that they don't have the ability to kind of find their spot? Like, can they look through the roster and be like, can't do that. Okay, this is where I'm going to go, or do they just can't get?
Yeah, some people can't get by that, right? Mm-hmm. And they go, well, no, I'm a goal scorer, and that's what I'm going to do. And you see a lot of guys who are tremendous players in, the AHL or the minors that can't make that jump.
Yep.
Because they're a great goal scorer there, but when you get up to the NHL, a half a step or a quarter of a stride makes a big difference. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to be that goal scorer, goal scorer you were in the minors.
Yeah.
And that's why, especially guys with speed, you can adjust your game. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of that. And I think the mindset of everybody, right? And I think if you're always a great player, like if you were the best player ever in your organization, you're always that way. And, and then maybe you can adjust when you get to a bigger environment where there's lots of great players. And believe me, there's a ton of great players. You know, there's a lot of guys at camp that were way better than I was, but you know, you find a way to do whatever you need to do to stay with the team and be with the team. And I go, it's tough to make the NHL. It's tough to stay in the NHL too.
Yeah. There's not many of you guys around. Can you fast forward to 89?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the only reason I'm on you, that I'm a diehard Flames fan. Yeah. My grandpa bought season tickets day one at the Dome, and I've been going since then. He brought me when I was like 4 or 5.
That's great.
So 89 is like near and dear to my heart. So I'd love for you to, and was it the pinnacle of your hockey career?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, there's always, you know, different points in your career, but obviously winning the cup is the pinnacle because, you know, other than making it and scoring a goal, you go, because it could have ended there. But winning the cup was pretty special. We thought, you know, with the team we had, we might be able to win 2 or 3 during those years. And, you know, we probably should have, but you realize all those certain little things happen, you know, injuries, suspensions, you know, maybe, you know, whatever it is, those smaller things, like the little things make a big difference in the game. And that's why the Oilers were always so good. You know, they had good depth, but their top players, you know, they were really good. Our top guys were good too, but you know what I mean? You get a goal here or a goal there, and that's the timely goals that you get. It's not, you know, when you get shellacked, you get shellacked. Like there's not, but when the games are close and there's a goal that goes in that you go, we should have had that, you know, and it's, you know, people always like, well, it's a goalie's fault. Well, no, the play starts, you know, there's about 20 things that happen before that puck goes in the net. You know, the odd time, you know, you get one from the face-off that goes to a guy and goes in. Well, you know, that's a little different. But that 89 team was special. We had a lot of great guys, like great players, you know, and a lot of players that were at the end of the career, but a lot of great players that were just starting their career that hadn't become, you know, to the greatness that they were going to be. Right. And so that's when you looked at the team and you go, boy, we've got something here. And even from 86 on, like I thought, you know, we should have won in 86. You know, we're probably, you know, there, and then 87, 88, you think you're going to be back again, but you don't. And then you get back in 89, you go, you know, we almost lost against Vancouver. I mean, I'll never forget Cliff Fletcher coming on the bus after Game 6 in Vancouver, and we were going to Game 7 in Calgary. And we were like 30 or 40 points ahead of them. We won the President's Trophy. And here we are going into Game 7. And I remember him coming on the bus, and he goes, if we don't win this Game 7, there's going to be a lot of changes next year. And sure enough, we went into overtime. That's when that goal went in off of Joel Otto's skates, which every Vancouver Canuck fan says he kicked it in, shouldn't have been allowed. But, you know, they had tremendous opportunities. And Verney came up with just amazing saves, you know. And from that, you know, once you got past that first round, we seemed to settle down and get back into the flow that we were in before. And, you know, Montreal, you know, playing them in the final, we were an evenly matched, you know, teams going at it.
You know,
we
had
played them in 86. We
like,
knew
could
that.
You sit in the room, like, you know full well what you're about to get into and how close it's going to be?
Absolutely. And, you know, although we won the President's Trophy, they were second, you know, and by a point, I think. I don't even know if it was a point or we tied, and we got, you know, from wins, losses. I can't remember what it was, but we were very close. And it was, you know, rare when the top 2 teams meet in the finals.
And like you said, it's just all these intangible things. Like, it's just that you had the chance from 86, and like there was just 3 years everything could have lined up, but like the chances of, you know, going 3 in a row is obviously very rare. But can you look back and understand like what these little nuances were?
Yeah, I can now. Yeah. You know, and even going back to 84 when Edmonton won their first Stanley Cup, we had taken them to 7 games. You know, and I remember being in Edmonton playing in that Game 7. And myself personally, I had this great opportunity, and Grant Fuhr made this tremendous...
Fucking Grant Fuhr.
Yeah, he made this tremendous chest save on me.
You're trying to go through him.
I got it, and I just turned, I shot and hit him right in the friggin' Oiler logo. I go, oh my God, great save. But I go, it's funny. I go, had I scored that, it might have been a different game.
Yep.
Had, something else happened, it would have been a different game. So you look at those things, and I think you look personally and you go, oh, boy, if I would have done this or this, could I, it would have been a different game.
Yep.
And although winning the cup, it's the ones that, you didn't win that sort of haunt you, but people, I go, we're, now that my career's over and you look back at it, I go, I'm so fortunate to have won one.
Well, because nobody gets to do that.
There's
right?
a ton of guys. There's like so many great players in the game that don't even get a sniff, don't even get to the finals, let alone win.
Yeah.
And you go, we had a great team, we had a great group of guys.
Yep.
We had so much fun together. And I think that was the big thing, right? People tend to forget, we were great players. Like, it was a great team, and we were a very, good cohesive unit. But we had a lot of fun. Like, being in that dressing room, we had so many laughs and, so many characters, right? And that's what the game was. You had a lot of different characters in the years.
And you're right. There, to score your first goal, then to win a cup, it's whatever it is, 0.00, whatever the number is. It's just, when you were done, when did you retire?
I retired in 94. And then I went over to Europe and played a year in Europe. So I got traded to Buffalo, played 2 years in Buffalo, played 8 in Calgary, then 2 in Buffalo. I had suffered a bunch of knee injuries. And, after my last year in Buffalo, I sort of knew that I was probably done.
How old are you?
I was 34.
Okay. So you were.
Yeah. So, but I don't know, you always think you could play another year, but I remember I came out, there's this guy who was, for whatever reason, his name was Dave. He was a big fan of mine in Buffalo. And he goes, Colin, do you mind signing this for me? I said, Dave, hold on a second. I went back in the dressing room. I grabbed my skates. I go, here you go, buddy.
No way.
Yeah. You're just, because I go, I'm pretty sure I'm done.
Yep.
So, as it turns out, I phoned a bunch of teams because I was my own agent at that point, and I phoned around a bunch of teams. And the best you probably do is get a tryout, which wasn't going to be really good for me. I'm not going to be a flashy player. So do you want to play in the minors and maybe get called up? I don't know if I wanted to do that. And then Neil Sheehy, Harv,
he's like this constant thread in your life.
Constant thread, yeah. So he phones me up, and he is over in Slovenia, former Yugoslavia, and he goes, Patter, do you want to come over here? He goes, we need some imports.
Need you.
And he goes, are you going to play? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I was waiting to hear back from Anaheim, and that's where Jack Ferraro was. And, I was waiting, and he got back to me and said, we can bring you out on a tryout. And I said, well, Jack, I think I'm going to go over to Europe and play. So I went over and I played in Slovenia, but it was the best thing for me to finish playing.
Yep.
Because, you come into the league, you're everybody in that league's a good player.
Yep.
You just assume a different role, right? And if it happens to be a role that you like, or I shouldn't say you like that, you have been doing in the past, but you go, great. But if it isn't one and you have to change your game to play that role, you go, it'd be fun to just play the game. So going over there, I played power play. I played a lot of penalty killing. That was my life and blood in the NHL. But then you're a regular shift. You're on, if you're down a goal or if you're up a goal, you played a ton, and it just, all of a sudden I got the love for the game back. And then, the next year I was going to go back, but I just decided, what, we had 3 kids and we just said, what, let's just, time to shut her down. Yep. But I was happy with my decision, and it was my decision to stop playing in that. It wasn't my decision to stop playing the NHL, but, when you're only playing, 30 or 40 games a year, and you're getting injured, that it sort of tells a tale, and you know that. You're smart enough to know.
So without that, because that transition, again, I'm not a pro athlete. I'm not trying to talk out of my ass here, but it seems like that transition can be tricky.
Yeah, it can be tricky. And as I said, I went back those 3 years and finished my degree, but I also worked 3 summers for a good friend of mine, Carl Bond. In town here? In town, yeah. Okay. And, he has since passed away, a great guy. But he had some long-term care residents that now his son Joel runs. But I worked 3 summers there.
Doing what?
learning the business, management side of it, the cash flow and how.
Is that what your degree was?
My degree was in marketing and management.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that, and so that helped prepare me for when hockey finished.
Yep.
I always say the biggest transition for me was you didn't have the afternoon naps when you were working.
2:30, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I got well, man. But because that was your life when you were playing.
Yeah.
You get that afternoon nap.
So once you kind of figured it out and you're done with hockey, are you then trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life? Because you're young, right? You're probably 35, 36, retired.
Yeah. And that's what, and we didn't have enough money to retire. I had to work.
Yeah.
And it was just figuring out what we wanted to do. We had our green cards so we could work in the U.S. And that was one of the neat things. Like Buffalo was very good that way of, making sure if you want to get a green card, they get you one.
Yep.
And so we had one, and both my wife and I, so we could have worked in the U.S. I had a couple opportunities from Buffalo to stay in the game.
Yep.
One was to be an assistant coach, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to go and keep playing.
Yep.
And then one was to be a scout, which I didn't really want to do. I didn't want to travel away from the family.
Yep.
But as things turn out, the jobs you take, you end up traveling a bit. So, but yeah. And we just decided, my wife's family is in Calgary. And
you met her here?
Yeah, we met here, and it was, I just said, time to settle down. And Calgary is a very entrepreneurial city, as we well know, and there's lots of opportunities if you want to get involved. And, through the Flames, you're involved in a lot of charity things anyways, and our alumni was just starting up. And so it was a neat time to be, finishing the game and moving on.
Yep.
And it was really good. And I really enjoyed, the transition.
Yep.
I mean, people go, would you do things different? Well, if you knew what, things were going to happen, you'd probably do things different. But truly, I was happy with my decision and, what we did and staying here. And, we 3 kids grew up here and they've got great friends and, we've got great friends and family here. Our alumni we got, I would say, the best alumni in the league. And we have a unique format that we talked about a little off air, where our alumni is made up of guys who played with the Flames, but also guys who played in the NHL and live in Calgary.
And it's the perfect segue. Your passion for being alumni and being a part of this community, and like we talked off camera, 90 days that you were doing something alumni related. Yeah. Would you have ever guessed that you would have had that kind of passion, that kind of energy, and that kind of dedication to pull that off when you were playing and then retiring and trying to figure out what's next? Yeah,
I don't think you really thought of it that way, because I think you think, well, you're an old retired player. What do people, what are you going to do?
But that does cross your...
Yeah, it does cross your mind, and you go, but you realize, boy, there's a lot of things that you can do. And I mean, I get tired of people talking about all the stuff that, this and that, and, just do it. Like, just come back to the Nike thing, just do it. And if you go out and you help out, and, our alumni is great because we do it.
Like, you guys are always out.
Always. I mean, our alumni did 200 events last year.
Crazy.
Like, between all the guys. And, we probably have about 70 or 80 guys, half of which played for the Flames, half of, what we talked about, played in the NHL somewhere, but, live here, and whether they grew up here or decide to reside here. And anytime anybody puts a Flaming Sea logo on, they represent the Calgary Flames, and they do it in great fashion. And we got guys, in our alumni, Morris Lukowicz and Lindsey Carson, Craig Levy, Warren Skordinsky, Archie Henderson, who have, who live in Calgary and have been part of our alumni for 30 years,
Crazy.
Lindsey Carson has a great line. He goes, I actually think I played for the Flames, because
he has to check like Hockey DB.
Because he's been part of our alumni so long. Dennis Polonich. We've got so many guys that have been around a long time. And then we got younger guys coming in, that, not only played for the Flames, but, guys who never played for the Flames. I got Tyler Sloan from here, Craig Weller. I mean, Zach Smith, he's from Maple Creek, Saskatchewan, played in Ottawa. He just retired and he's living in, just outside of Calgary. So I go, when you get, young guys like this, wanting to help out, because our fear was always, well, you get guys, they make all this money, they're not going to want to give back to community. And they do.
Yep.
And we have a really good group of, core young guys who are helping. I know Kami was on here,
Yep.
Mason Raymond, Curtis Glencross, Corey Sarge, Robin Regier, Rhett Warner. I mean, all these guys want to do something to give back.
Yep.
And it's really, it's heartwarming. It really is.
Does it just further cement your, like, how entrenched you are with community?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It's just, and is it just the right thing to do, or is it like in you that this is something you want to like really get in this community?
Yeah, I think it's, a couple of things. One, it's in you, and one, it's, the other, it's the right thing to do. But I also feel it's a duty,
Yep.
Playing in the NHL, that you need to give back, whether it's to, sports, the game,
Yep.
or it's to give back to the community and kids.
Yep.
And I think that's where our alumni is really good. And I think all our guys have that same idea and same concept of, we need to give back. And it is our duty to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we do it. And we just have a ton of guys who do a ton of different things, even stuff that I don't even know about. Guys are going to different schools or, different events that happen, whether it's, sledge hockey, it could be wheelchair hockey, it's, we got a group of guys that go out and they help out. It's called Superheroes. It's kids who have, some challenges, whether it's autism or Down syndrome, and teaching them to skate and play, and it's really heartwarming. But it's it's our group doing all different charity benefit stuff. Whether it's golf tournaments or dinners or speaking engagements, whatever it is, it's crazy the number of things our guys do to help out.
Did you when you were a youngster? Was there ever an alumni that kind of came across your, whether you were at school or at an event? Was it a thing back then? Do you remember anybody that came through? You're like, oh my God, this NHL is right here.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It wasn't the NHL. It was the CFL that used to do basketball.
Okay.
And I think they had a couple of ringers, and they come in and they play your high school team.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going and watching that. You go, boy, that's great, those guys, and you get their autographs. I mean, it's the same thing now, but I go, it was really neat to see that.
Yeah.
And that's part of why we do what we do too, is you've seen things before, and you see the group before you too doing it. And
Right.
and I know, obviously growing up in Toronto, and I mean, it's a big place, and the Leafs were pretty powerful, but they had a good alumni even at the time. And I was very fortunate that the girl who lived down the street from us, who used to babysit us, married Ron Ellis. So Ron was, he's a great guy. And I remember I was at a lacrosse tournament we were in, because they had their training camp in Peterborough, and we were playing this lacrosse tournament in Peterborough, and he was at the hotel, and I remember him saying, "Hey, Colin, how you doing?" And I was just like,
oh my God,
cloud nine. And then we were in the, we're in the pool, and he's throwing me around the pool, and I'll never forget that, right? And you go, that's what you have to be. You have to be a real person too.
Yeah. Do you make a conscious decision to remember those moments? Like, if it's the dead of winter, you've done whatever, 30 things in the last 3 months. Do you ever have to catch yourself and talk yourself through it? Be like, I need to do this for this reason.
Yeah.
I can't be tired.
Yeah. You can be tired, but you go, if it's the right reason, it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
There's times where you got to go, hey, I can't, we can't do everything.
Yeah.
And I've learned that over time.
Yep.
But I'm fortunate enough to have the time to be able to do things. And when you can and you give back, it's a pretty good feeling.
I can't imagine.
And, and sometimes you don't understand what you're actually giving back.
Yep.
And, but always feel like when we have a group of alumni at an event and we're having fun, everybody's having
totally.
fun. Yeah.
It's got to brighten people's days, weeks, months, whatever. Because I've seen you guys out and about a little bit, and it's just like, you're generally happy.
Yeah.
Like there's like you guys are just all characters. So
we've got a good group of characters. That's what's neat about it.
This has been really fascinating. The way we've got to where we are. I like to end the show with one question.
Yeah.
When I say Calgary, where does your head go?
My head goes to, a Western community of people who are entrepreneurial, who are welcoming. I think of the Stampede when you think of Calgary, and I think of all the volunteers with the Stampede and all the volunteers in our city. And there's so many of people that will put their hand up and help. And I think that's a really neat thing about, being a Calgarian now.
Mm-hmm. Did you, one last question. Yeah. Well, I got you. Yeah. When did you know you were going to always, did you know you're always going to end up in Calgary?
No.
It was like home base?
No, I didn't. You didn't really think about it when you were playing. I mean, you're playing and because there's always trade rumors about you. And then when you do get traded, it's, you're going to another city. Are you going to stay there? Yep. Do you want to, go back and live, near where I grew up? And, there's that aspect. I didn't really know until we came back here and settled here.
Yep.
And then you go, this is the right place to be. Yeah. And I think when you get traded, you feel the city has traded you. Mm-hmm. You don't truly understand till later on. It's a business decision. And, it was the best thing for me anyways. Yeah. But you think that, the whole city trades you. Yeah. Where I remember we came back and my wife and I went out for dinner. We ran into probably 5 or 6 different people that we knew that said, hey, are you back? Oh, great. Welcome back. And then you go, this is a place to be.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Jeff, my pleasure.
It was really cool to meet you and hear these stories. And like I said, I'm a diehard fan. So just to listen to everything firsthand is a cool afternoon for me.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks.